Hi there, I'm Dave Donaldson, founder of Zatomic AI, a prompt engineering and optimization platform. Today, I'm going to show you how Zatomic can improve your prompts so that your AI applications will produce more consistent and reliable results, and how it can save you hours of time and make you more productive with your prompt engineering efforts. With that, let's get started with the basics. So here we are, we've logged into the app and landed on the prompt library. Now you can think of prompts as essentially a collection of the versions for that particular prompt, right? So I've got a handful of prompts in here, and I'm going to go into this one called Western Europe Travel Agent. And you can see that I actually have 5 different versions for this particular prompt for this particular use case. And you can see the use case by going over to the info tab. And you can see here that says it's a travel agent who specializes in trips to Western Europe, in particular Portugal, Spain, United Kingdom, and so forth and so forth. Use case doesn't have to be a huge long write-up. It doesn't have to be a JIRA ticket or anything like that. Just sort of that short paragraph, those 2 to 3 sentences that really nail down what the goal and what you're trying to achieve with your prompts are. So we go back to the versions of this, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick this first one and go into here, and now we can see the editor. The editor is a real simple, really nice to use Markdown editor, and we went with Markdown because for 2 reasons. One is that AI models love Markdown. They work with that the Markdown format really well, and so that allows, from a human perspective, to be able to structure your prompts that AI models can really easily understand. And also, from that human perspective, it also works really well for humans, right? So it's easy to use, and that solves kind of 2 sides of the same coin. So I can come in here and I can work with the editor, make any changes I want. I can save and update it. I can save it as a new version and then work from that. You can see in the right-hand sidebar here, it tells me the number of tokens, gives me the cost it's gonna, how much it's gonna cost me per use and per 1,000 uses, just so I can kind of see that at a glance. And then I can work with it in that way. If we go back to our list of versions, you'll see that the one we went into actually has this little crown next to it. And if you hover over it, it says it's the primary version. That's important when you're using the API. So from an API perspective, you can request this particular prompt. And if you don't specify a version for that prompt, then it'll return you whichever version is actually deemed as the primary, in this case, that first one. You can certainly change that all you want. So if we wanted a different one to be the primary, I hit my little three dots out here, and I set that one as primary instead, and that's how that works. You also see here, this one actually has a name called latest version. I can give any version whatever name I want. By default, they all just get a timestamp, but you start to get a handful of versions. You start to lose track of what's what, right? So you can literally come in here and click the 3 dots again and see rename version, and we'll just call this one my other version. And so now, I have a couple versions that actually have a name to it. It's more easily identifiable in that way. Now, from a prompt perspective, everything is scoped and organized at a workspace level. And so workspaces are that folder, that container, you will, and they don't cross the streams, right? So every workspace is independent from other workspaces. Now, with workspaces, it gives you complete freedom to organize prompts however you see fit and whatever works for your business. So maybe you're an agency and you're working on behalf of a bunch of different clients. You can have workspaces for each individual client. Or maybe you want to organize them on a project level. Or maybe you want to organize them from an environment perspective, right? So maybe you have a development workspace and a testing workspace and a production workspace. And you can sort of, move prompts from, in that way from workspace to workspace. And how you would do that, actually, is if we go, and you can see here I'm in my default workspace, but if I go to view workspaces, I just have the one right now, but if I add a workspace, and we'll say this is my other workspace, save that. Now I've obviously got more workspaces, and so if I go back to my prompt library of the default workspace, and let's say I want to take my consulting firm travel expenses, and I either want to copy or move that particular prompt and its versions to another workspace, I can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy to workspace, and let's put that over in my other workspace. And now when we flip to that, you can see it also exists over there. So makes that really nice and easy from a management perspective, allow you to have that segmentation if you need it. So next, we're going to move. So that covers the basics. Next, let's move on to how we actually score prompts. All right, to see how the prompt scoring works, let's go back into that Western Europe travel agent prompt we were looking at just a second ago. And we're going to go into that, our primary version. So let's go back into that one. And here we are at the editor again. I'm going to go ahead and go over to the scoring tab. Now, just to save us a little bit of time, I went ahead and scored this prompt. And you can see here, it scored really well at a 96%. When you run scoring, it will bring you back a score from 0 to 100. Obviously, 100 is the best you can do. And anything 90 and above is really good and is gonna, you're gonna be pretty confident that's gonna produce the results that you want long before you even get to production. And you can see here, it's basically this scoring is based on the default system criteria that we've put out, right? So it has things like around having diverse examples, it has an expected output, it's defined a persona or role, it has relevant examples, it has rules and instructions and a handful of others in here. And every piece of criteria then is basically assigned a score. And so if you hover over the little scoring icon here, you can see that for each piece of criteria, it is assigned a number 0 through 5, where 0 is the criteria wasn't met at all, and 5 is that it was fully addressed, right? And then and someplace in between with 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then from there it's assigned an overall weighted score, and then you add those things together, and that gives you, in this case, 96%. Now, this 96 is obviously really good, but it still actually has room for improvement. And so if you view the report, you get a flyout panel here that starts to give you that really targeted analysis for any adjustments that you might want to make. And so here you get a summary of your strengths and weaknesses. And for each of those pieces of criteria, you actually get really targeted feedback. And you can see here, all these are green, which is great, except we have one here for the 5 examples. It's a yellow because we actually didn't have 5 examples in our prompt. We had 2 examples. So of course that couldn't have met the criteria, but it did okay, right? So I suppose if we then changed our prompt to have 5 examples, then we'll actually get close to 100%. But that's how that works. So you actually have really relevant targeted information and feedback around how to make changes to your prompt. So you can go back, make those changes in the editor, come back here, rescore it, and continue to iterate in that way. Now, you notice here, I was talking about the default set of system criteria. Now, this is for the Western Europe travel agent. But you can create custom scoring criteria to get very specific for your use case. And so we're going to take a look at that now. So if I pull up the list of available scoring criteria, you can see I got the default selected, but there's actually a travel agent criteria I created earlier. And we're going to go into how to do that in a little bit. But if I select that one, now what happens is I get loaded up with that particular criteria. And notice this is very different. Now I have things like budget considerations and cultural insights, diversity of activities, local transportation options, things like that. Things that are obviously very targeted toward, traveling, right? And that kind of prompt and that kind of conversation. And so let's go and kick the scoring off and see how this does. Now, ideally, the best prompts, what we found is you take a mix of sort of some of our default system criteria, matching it with very custom criteria for your prompt, and now you've got something really good. And so here, right, this actually scored an 86% based on criteria specifically for, travel agent criteria. And so again, 86% is pretty good, but there's some room for improvement. So again, if we view the report, we can come down here and start to see kind of where we got dinged. And well, here we go. For customer feedback integration, it didn't score well at all. It basically says the prompt doesn't address it. So that's something that we might want to take a look at. Seasonal attraction suitability or local transportation options. It did okay there, but maybe there's some other things we can work with in the prompt to pull those more to the forefront and give those more weight. And again, these are highly tailored and customizable to whatever your needs are, right? And so that makes it for a really powerful combination of flexibility and targeted analysis to make sure, in this case, if you have a chatbot on a travel agent site targeting Western Europe, conversations, well, now you have custom criteria that'll help guide that system prompt so that it doesn't ever get too far away from the main line, if you will. right? So that's how that works in terms of scoring. Next up, we're going to take a look at how the balance works. All right, so we're going to go from the score tab to the balance tab. And again, to save us a little bit of time, you can see that I've already ran the analysis here. But the point of balance is to look at the overall structure of a prompt and to make sure certain categories don't outweigh one or the other. And so how this works is it takes your prompt and breaks it into meaningful phrases and then categorizes each of those phrases into one of four categories, either instructions, entities, concepts, or details. The idea here is if you are overloaded or you're underused on a particular category, the sort of the balance, the distribution of your prompt can lead to results, unreliable results, inconsistent results, and maybe the results are too verbose, right? So the verboseness is actually good in here. You can see the instructions is overused in this particular prompt at 50%. And that tells me right at a glance, like my prompt probably is trying to do too many things and I've told it too many things to do. And in fact, you can actually highlight the phrases of instructions here and just kind of get a feel for it. So yeah, here's the phrases of my prompt. And yes, it looks like most of them, right, are instructions. Whereas if I hover over, I highlight entities, it's clearly not near as many. And so the point here is it allows you to restructure your prompt, or maybe you have to break a prompt up. It's very common for people to try to shove too much into a single prompt. Well, then you run the risk of it not focusing on the things that you want it to focus on, and therefore you don't get the results that you're looking for. This is a way in which you can start to restructure and rework the structure so that you've got better sort of distribution and balance, if you will, to make sure it's targeted and the results are what you're looking for. And just like scoring, you get a flyout report here that gives you that summary, gives you some recommendations, and then also feedback for each of the four categories and whether or not, if it's overused, what you can do about that. If it's underused, suggestions on how to make that more palatable, right? And so again, it's just another tool and another way of looking at your prompt in terms of a holistic point of view to make sure it's going to produce the results that you want. So that's how that works. It's actually really hard to get this to all greens across the board, but that's also not necessarily the point. The point is just for you to be able to look at this and in a matter of a few seconds, realize like, oh, I have way too many instructions, or I don't have nearly enough, detail in here, or have too much detail, which can lead to very verbose responses, right? That's also a thing we want to try to avoid. So that's how you use balance. And from here, we're going to take a look at what the heat map looks like. All right, so heading over to the heat map tab. Now, heat map works in similar fashion to the balance in that it takes the prompt and breaks it into meaningful phrases. But then what it does is it applies a visual representation of the AI attention to each of those phrases. So basically what's going on here is we're working with the model to say, hey, what phrase in here did you think was most important and least important and, everywhere kind of in between? The idea here is essentially to make sure you and the AI model are on the same page. For instance, in this case, this one of these early phrases here, specializing in crafting memorable trips to Western Europe. Yes, I think we probably look at that and go, yeah, that's probably the most important thing in terms of this overall prompt. But what if it wasn't? What if in your mind it was, this one here, right? It's a lighter shade of red. It's a little pinkish. And it, when you hover over it, it tells you why it gave you that weight it did. But if that's the most important thing, then what that tells you is, all right, we might have some work to do in the overall structure of the prompt. Maybe I need to change the phrasing a little bit so that the wording in this one isn't as strong as it should be in the other phrase that I think is most important, and then make those edits and come back in here and rerun the heat map all over again. So, because as you scroll through here, right, you get the various attention weights, and that's really what the heat map is all about. It's a visual representation of AI's attention weights, just to make sure, again, it's sort of a little peek under the covers on how it's thinking and what it's going to deem most important, to make sure that you also agree that that's most important. Now, tying back to the balance, remember we talked about how if you have too many instructions, right, it's going to be out of balance, it's going to be overused. Well, let's say you have a balance of like 70 or 80% of instructions. You come into that prompt, into the heat map, what you would expect to see this would probably be mostly all red. And that's a clear indicator that you've given it a prompt too many things to do, because it starts to think it's all important or as equally as important. And if everything's equally as important, then it's going to focus on the wrong thing and not give you the results that you want. So again, with scoring, with balance, with heat map, this is just another data point in which you can analyze and optimize your prompts. Again, well before you even put it into production, and so that once you go to release to production, it's gonna produce the results that you want. So from here, let's take it and we're gonna take a look at how to generate new versions. All right, so we're gonna hop over to our generate tab, and this is one of those that is a huge time saver. So we have like 5 different versions of this prompt, right? And we're working through it. But let's just say, let's add another one to the mix, but I don't necessarily want to start from scratch. Let me see what the AI models can do for me, and maybe they'll give me something that I actually want to work from. So in this case here, it's going to take the use case for your prompt, and then we're going to go ahead and just say, generate me a new prompt, and it's going to go through and generate you a prompt. Now, the nice thing about this, as it generates, it actually uses much of that default scoring criteria we looked at earlier, so that it actually produces you a well-structured, really good prompt that's going to produce, reliable, consistent results. Again, and so I can take this as is. Maybe I look at this and I go, yeah, I don't know, I'm not quite feeling that. You know what? Generate me another version. And it's going to generate you, again, a similar yet different version, which you can do ad nauseum until you get one that you look like you want to start with. And so in this case here, let's look at this one. It's like, yeah, you know what? Let me start with that. I'm gonna work with that one and go from there. So I can save this one as a new version, and now I've taken it and I've got it back in my editor, and I can start to make the tweaks to it that I want, and then go back through the scoring and the balance and the heat map and rework the analysis on this version and figure out, at that point, let's put that in production and kind of go from there. And so that's how generating new versions of prompts works. Again, huge time saver, right? Creating prompts from scratch can be time consuming, but this allows you to generate versions to your heart's content that you can then take and customize and tweak, as you see fit. So, all right. So from here, we're actually going to go back to the scoring and look how to create custom scoring criteria. All right. So in the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and go back over to scoring criteria. And we saw this earlier, right? When we scored our prompt for, the Western Europe travel agent, we selected this travel agent criteria that I had created earlier. And if we go into that, you can see here's that list of individual criterion that we have with, its label and its weight and description, and more specifically and importantly, the questions, right? The questions are the most important thing here, because that's what the AI model uses to do the analysis, to make sure that the prompt, how well does the prompt satisfy those particular questions. Now we can come in here and we can edit each of these to our heart's content, right? We can come in here and say, all right, I'm going to change the label, description, what have you. You can also change the weight. Now the weight is important because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's how much weight do you want that particular criteria to have in terms of the overall scoring process, right? So maybe, and you can set it from 1 to 999. So if we want this one to be, 200 instead of 20, we can certainly do that. And so now if we were to go back and rerun the scoring on the Western Europe travel agent prompt, you'll see that much more weight will have been given to the budget considerations criteria than the rest of them. Now, so we have this, but let's go ahead and create a new one from scratch. So I'm gonna go back here. Let's add a new criteria, because creating new criteria also can be hugely time consuming. And sometimes it's not as obvious what pieces of criteria you need, right? So we're going to save you a whole bunch of time. So I'm going to go ahead and call this criteria. I'm just going to give it a name. We're going to call it test criteria. And, you can give it any use case you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a use case from one of our existing prompts. And so I'm going to use the employee onboarding guide. And the use case for this is to develop an AI system that guides new hires through the onboarding process, answers FAQs, and so forth, right? And I'm going to go ahead and say, generate this for me. And this will take a couple seconds, but it's going to look at that use case and come up with, a few pieces of criteria that kind of prompt needs to satisfy for that particular use case. And so here you have it. We have our test criteria with this. Now, we can either take this as is, or we can obviously make changes to this. Maybe I don't like one of these. Maybe I just want to delete one of them, right? And I can come in here and hit the three dots and say delete. Or at this time it only generated 4. We might want some more than that. So if we come over to its generate tab, using the same use case, we're going to generate some more criteria. And what that's doing, it's going to, again, generate some more, but it's not going to generate the same that we just did. It's going to actually generate things that are different so that there's no duplication and overlap. So you've got a unique set. And so kind of similar to when we generated the prompt, I can do this, however many times I want. Maybe I like this set. Maybe I want to regenerate it. I'm not going to regenerate here, but I'm going to say, all right, let's keep this particular set. And then it'll add it to when we generated the first time. And now we've got, 10 or so pieces of criteria in here. And so we can use this now when we, if we go into our employee onboarding prompt, now we can score that prompt against this particular set of criteria, just like we did for the Western travel agent. And so again, another one of those that allows you to get very targeted to your use case and at the same time save you a ton of time. So that you can, you can be way more productive and get things out the door faster. So from here, we're going to take a look at how to set up various different AI providers so that you can use your own AI accounts with regards to all the things you've seen so far. All right, so from here, I'm going to click my little profile guy up in the top right corner, and I'm going to hit select account. And once I'm in my account, I've got an AI providers tab. Now you can see here, I've already set up a few, but before we get into this, the reason why this would be important is because by default, Zatomic uses GPT-4o to power most of the things that you've seen here so far. But not everybody uses GPT-4o, or you use different models for various things. And so you can actually wire up your Zatomic account to your existing AI provider so that when you run the scoring or the balance analysis or the heat map, you can do that against the models you're actually using so that you get an apples to apples analysis and optimization and not, doing it from a different model that might have a different result from the model you're actually using. And so if we go into add a provider, we currently support 11 different AI providers. So models from AI 21 Labs, a whole bunch of models from Amazon Bedrock, the Anthropic models, both sides of Azure in terms of OpenAI and the various models that are exposed and that you can run with Azure Serverless, the Cohere models, Google Gemini, Mistral, OpenAI, of course, and the 2 new ones we recently added with Together and XAI. And so you can go into one of these really simply, connect to your account. And so, if we pick Anthropic, right? Anthropic makes it really simple. All you got to do is give it a name, select, you can see the list of supported models, right? We can select which of those models is the default that we want it to be when we use this particular provider. So maybe we're using the new 3.7 Sonnet. And of course, enter in your API key, which we store we store encrypted with its own individual cryptographic vector, so that it's completely unique and can't be gotten a hold of. And so I've already done this. I'm not going to do it again. And so here we're back at our list of providers. Now I've got my list, and so maybe you're using a handful, but maybe there's one that you actually use that's kind of your default. And so like I'm going to take the XAI provider and I'm going to set that as my default. So when I go into things now, that's just the one that's selected for me, and it'll use, since XAI right now only exposes the Grok 2 model, it'll use that one. Now, where you can use this is, let's go back into our prompt library. And we're gonna pick that employee onboarding guy we were just talking about with the custom criteria. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna go to score this one. Now it previously has a score, and I'm gonna score it against that test criteria we just did. Okay, so here we go. I've got benefits enrollment assistance and interactive learning opportunities and whatnot. But up near the top right, I have a settings link. And so I can fly out this panel, select XAI, which is going to select Grok 2, apply that, and then I can go ahead and score that. So if you're using Grok 2 from XAI as your model, well, you wire it up, and now you can do the scoring against Grok 2. That way you've got, again, you're running on apples to apples comparison analysis for your particular prompts. And, this one did not do great, right? 61% is fair. Definitely some room for improvement, right? And we can view our report like we were looking at earlier and make our necessary adjustments. But again, scoring with that, if we go back to balance, I can come back in here and say, oh, do the score, do it with Grok 2, run the balance analysis. Same with the heat map. Same when we generate a new version. So if I want to come in here, generate that new version with Grok 2, come in here, and now I'm using, Grok 2 from XAI in my XAI account to generate that and go from there. And so that's how that works. So that you can wire up your own accounts to the models you're actually using, so that again you're on the same page and with the models that you're actually using. So, all right. Next up, we're going to wrap this up by taking a real quick look at the API. All right. So to wrap things up, we're going to take a real quick look at the API. Now, if you go to docs.zatomic.ai, this is our API reference, and you can see it's already really robust, right? Basically, everything you've seen so far inside the app, you can do through the API. So managing your prompts, managing your prompt versions, moving them back and forth between workspaces, running, performing the prompt scoring, running the prompt, the balance analysis, generating your heat map data, generating new prompt versions, generating the custom scoring criteria and applying scoring criteria in terms of prompt to actually do the scoring. All of that is already exposed through the API. And so every time we push out an update to the app, we do the same thing in the API so that it stays consistent and in sync with what you can do. And so what this means is if you want to utilize Zatomic as a headless prompt management optimization system, you can absolutely do that, but it allows you to pull Zatomic and the things that it provides you into really easily into your existing workflows so that you've got really great flexibility and power from an integration perspective. So one example would be from a build perspective. If you want to pull the prompt scoring into your build process for a prompt, you can set it up such that you can use our API, run the score for a prompt, and if it falls below, let's say 90%, then you can fail the build, send a notification so somebody can take a look at it, rework the prompt, get the prompt back up to where it should be before you actually deploy that thing to production. That's just one of many examples in terms of how you can use this as part of your larger, agentic workflows, orchestrations, automation processes in terms of prompt engineering and optimization. And with that, that brings us to the end of our walkthrough. Hopefully you've seen how Zatomic can improve your prompts and how much time it can save you in your overall prompt engineering efforts. We're always looking for feedback, so please reach out, get in touch. We'd love to have a chat. Again, my name is Dave Donaldson, founder of Zatomic AI. Thank you for watching.